Hello and welcome to another episode of Quarantine with Fulbrighters. One of the main advantages I have of this format and this platform is that I also get to talk to people that I've had the privilege of speaking to at conferences, and it's been a long while. So I'm so happy that we get to talk again. Shazia Mirza, how are you doing?
Gee, I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me here. And
No, no,
I must say that I'm a big fan. I,
no,
I must
I'm
say
I'm
that.
a big
Okay.
fan of you and all the work that you do. I think we met in NCA a few years ago. At this point,
Yeah,
time holds no
we
meaning,
did.
but I cherish those
Mhm.
conversations that we have and all the work that you're doing. Um, you have a Fulbright Masters from SUNY New Platts, right?
New Paltz.
New
New
Paltz.
Paltz.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. I went to Brooklyn, so my English accent is not good. And what exactly was it in?
I was there from 2008 to 10, and it was in ceramics. So it was an MFA
Mm.
concentration in ceramics.
And
But
that's
I
what
did a lot of other things as well.
that is what you teach at NCA, right?
Yeah, I had the Department of Ceramics at NCA.
Beautiful. What are the other things? You mentioned a lot of other things that you learned. I'm a lot more curious about those now.
Well, I can't tell here. I can't say it here.
So this is
You
the
know,
Fulbright
yeah.
experience that we talk about.
Yes, this is the Fulbright experience. Yes. Yeah.
No, but even
Very,
even
very.
in your degrees, for instance, my official degree that I did was a Fulbright Masters in
Mm-hmm.
theater, but I could take
Mm-hmm.
electives, and there was an elective in documentary filmmaking that I was really curious about. And then there were
Mm-hmm.
courses in new media and how to use theater. So
Mm-hmm.
I sort of justified it along those lines that I'm going to do a
Mm-hmm.
new medium theatrical piece. So I needed some filmmaking experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a documentary filmmaking course. But why
Mm-hmm.
is this podcast becoming about me? We have to make it about you and talk
Okay.
about all the work that you do.
Okay. So the best thing about Fulbright is they don't pay according to the course, so you can take as much course load as possible, and that's
I'm
exactly
not
what I
sure if
did.
Fulbright
Okay.
wants you to tell people that is what happens.
Okay, I'm not sure about that, but anyways, I used to have a space in a metal studio because the
Mm,
school that I went to was is number one, has been number one for the last good 40 years in metal smithing and jewelry. So I took a lot of courses from there,
mm,
and obviously I was doing my work in ceramic studio as well. So I think that is the strength that Fulbright program has. I mean, it places you in universities with
mm.
things that you can never be offered here in Pakistan, and that's exactly what you do. You take courses that you can never take in Pakistan. That's
And
what
I
I
think,
do.
especially in terms of, I went for a performing arts degree, you went for an arts
Mm-hmm.
degree. There are very few
Mm-hmm.
institutions, and an institution that you belong to, it's almost like a lighthouse in this sea, shining this bright light for artists and slightly mad people like me to give us a safe haven. So, can we just
Yeah.
begin this podcast by talking about NCA and the cultural history and significance of that institution?
Yeah. There are things you find on website when how we were formed and who
Yes.
formed what, all the written history, but that is not the history that I'm after, because it's just a sentence. So I'm just trying to populate all the sentences. I'm trying to put people in instead of the words, because we had a very tumultuous history, because we were this little island. We still are that little island where we try to protect all the freedoms, all the human freedoms that are refused outside that little island. And it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy, and so many people from my school, students and faculty, they've all been very experimental, and they've always questioned everything, and questioning is not good. So all that knowledge is tacit knowledge.
Hmm.
Tacit in a way that sometimes you're doing something but you don't know why you're doing it. I want to find out why people started suddenly believing in something that needs to be done. And then there is oral history which is
Yes.
not recorded because it is offensive. It is offensive and it is troublesome. It is about people who are still alive.
And take,
So I don't push people to do say things that I want them to say, but there's a lot of unsaid material needing to be recorded. So I'm just trying to see the real history of NCA
hmm.
as told by the people who have been through all these things. So I've been looking for people who are old graduates, and the oldest graduate that I found is a graduate of 1956. although I haven't been able to talk to him as yet, but that is really
Wow.
old.
We've jumped straight into this discussion for people who might not know what exactly is the project that you're doing about the oral history of NCA and the people who went to NCA.
Yeah. So, not a lot of my history is recorded.
Mhm.
Not a lot of history of NC has been recorded. So I just want to do two things basically. One, I'm trying to understand what is our formula. How do we work? How do we train people to think out of the box? What is our formula of creativity? Because we never actually followed a written curricula for a long, long, long time. So how did people, taught trained other people so well that they excelled so much? So one, I'm trying to find how the creative formula that NCA has been practicing, and secondly, I want to just construct a timeline, how things evolved and how thought evolved and developed and failed, and rose again, and other things, different formulas were tried out, and the success rate, the failure, and all that timeline. So it
Hmm.
is the timeline that I was actually focused on. But once you delve into the project, you understand that there are other things that you never even thought of. So it's a mix. I'm trying to talk to 5 people per entry year, starting from 1952. But then I found
Wow.
somebody from 1956. So this 5 people per year sample will land me. Uh, I'll have to do something like 350 or 360 conversation. I'm done with 176 as yet. I
Wow.
started in
Halfway
September,
there.
almost halfway there.
It's so beautiful. I
Uh,
mean, I keep arguing against the primacy of the written word, especially I think a lot of people who are listening to this abroad. I think that primacy of the written word, especially in Western
hmm,
culture, and I hate this
hmm,
Eastern Western binary. I
hmm,
absolutely detest it. But for
hmm,
processes of simplification and understanding,
hmm,
I'm using that
hmm,
term instead of the Western canon that we've existed. I think the
hmm,
primacy of the written word is a big
hmm,
thing in terms of academia, and it undervalues oral cultures, it undervalues oral histories, and there is a dire need, especially for cultures
hmm,
like ours, which have not historically been maybe defined by us. They've been looked at from a Western lens, whether it's Oriental, whether it's colonial, to write these cultural histories. And institutions like NCA, like you said on the website, you'll find the year it was formed, the year a building was formed,
yeah,
notable
everything.
alumni. But who are these people? What were they doing? What was happening? How do you recreate what NCA was like in 1956? What did it look like?
Yeah.
That's that's why the work that you're doing is so essential.
Yeah. I anticipated things, but what I'm finding out, it's very, very, very surprising. There's so many facts, and we are people who are, we work in this ustad and shagird
Mm,
system, and people don't speak in front of ustads. That also means a lot of things just remain unsaid. You can't speak in front of ustad. If ustad has narrated that fact, you will respect it,
yes.
right? And you won't challenge it. But then again, we are people who question. So there is this tension between things that I really need to say it. Will you actually record it? Yes, I will record it, but will you publish it? I mean, of course, if you want me to publish it, I will publish it. But then by through this project, people are getting encouraged to just put record and right. But
Mm.
then COVID also helped. I need to say something here. I i lost 3 of my family members
I'm
in
so
COVID.
sorry.
I
I'm
i've
so
i've
sorry for
survived
this.
COVID myself. One of my very good friends, she was from my cohort, Malia Khushnood, she also died of COVID. She was only 40. So this brush with death, this has put many people in an urgency to say what they couldn't say. And
Mm.
I'm trying to benefit from this human kind of urge to record, say it.
I'm so sorry for your loss. It's when we talk about things, these things which are important to us, I think we forget how hard this year has been for most of us, and
Yes, yes,
it's
yes, yes,
it's
yes.
a tragedy of epic proportions that humanity needs to remind itself to never repeat, hopefully. And hopefully the ones that come out on the other side learn from this and make a better world. um, Are any of these things on which the statute of limitations has passed? So you can tell us, or at least publicly acknowledge the things that happen in NCA that nobody knows of.
So yeah, there have been so many conflicts. You want to do one thing, but then the government doesn't let you do it. We started the struggle of this independent degree. We were a diploma. We were given a diploma till 1985.
Mm.
So the struggle for degree started in somewhere in 1973, 74, and there were little student protests and questions. Why aren't we given a degree when UIT is giving a degree in architecture? Why aren't we given a degree? Although we study for 5 years and things like that. But who granted us a degree? Saul Haq. And we have been against dictatorships.
Yes.
So we found out, like I found out this fact that uh, in 85 Zaula came to NCA, and there were massive protests within the campus. I mean, there were so many people who just didn't go into principal's office. The current principal, at that the present principal was criticized a lot by students. Why have you even why did you even think of inviting a dictator? But then he was the one he who awarded us degree. And this was a big debate later, like last year, when we found this out. So there are bitter pills that people have swollen, and it's not easy to be free, to win those little freedoms in face of these this series of dictatorships. NCA was under threat of closure. NCA was under threat of being affiliated to other universities. We always faced a threat from the
Mm.
ruling parties, and especially Jamaat
The
Islami,
far
and
right,
the
especially.
student wing. Yeah. So our history is laced with all these little things. I mean, somebody would tell you a fact, but then he will shift responsibility onto somebody else. Oh, you need to talk to that person, and that person will come in and say, didn't he tell you he was like the major person? He has all the photographs. So bit by bit, all these things that couldn't have been said. And now in 2021, I don't understand why they couldn't have been said, but eventually this is how it was. So a lot of those things are being recorded.
So you
And
also, sorry, go for
yes,
it. Go for it. Go for it.
yeah, that's it.
You also said
Hmm.
that by listening to all of these, you were able to maybe come up with some analysis or some observations of what makes NCA NCA, or at least what makes people from NCA NCA, because I'm not sure how true it is, but the popular notion is you can tell if somebody's from NCA.
Yeah.
Just the way that they exist, you can tell that they're from NCA. So were you able
Yeah.
to piece together some observations that this is what makes somebody from NCA, or these are the sparks, or this is what NCA is?
Yeah, I mean, the meaning of NCA culture changes every 10 years.
Hmm.
Every 10 years, our lingo, our words change, and the meaning of freedom changes every 10, 15 years. Since I'm talking about timeline,
Hmm.
but there are some things that are quite common, right from the start. Like, the moment we enter, there's an erasure of class distinctions.
But you were saying
Mm.
about things that made some from NCA somebody from NCA.
Yeah. So the class distinction is removed. That means any or somebody from Sindh, or somebody who's Hari's child, he would rag or talk to a general's daughter. So this equalization kind of that makes us who we are. But then there is also a very strong, support system. We support each other and appreciate each other's work, and we also value every little quality that we have, everything which is valuable in us, be it humor, be it stupidity, even be it
Hmm.
courage. So we have this support structure, and we try to find out whoever has anything which is valuable, we will talk about it, bring it forward. And then we question, all the time we question gender roles. So all these things make us very abnormal. I mean, if normal is the world outside. That's why we people can just recognize us. These people are odd. These
Mm.
are just odd. They don't go with the norms. They don't believe in norms. So I think that is one main ingredient of being an NCI in all times. That's what I think.
I think it's so important for people to find their tribe, and
Yeah.
uh, I
Mm,
mean, words like normal are very problematic in terms of who defines who's normal, and who
mm,
defines who gets to be normal, and who gets erased from our histories because they're considered errant or different. But finding a
mm,
tribe where you see people like you and you're able to relate and create a family of your own, I think is very important. Institutions like NCA do a phenomenal job at it. I do think
mm.
the ragging culture sometimes definitely crosses the line, and there is a
Yes, it
sink
does.
or swim element, especially to people who come in. Uh,
Mm.
and some of them might have sunk as opposed to swam. And
Yes, I agree with that, and we have tried our level best to control that. But there's this crazy thing. We push people to experiment. We push
yes,
people to think out of the box. But what is out of the box? What is outside the box? It can be dangerous.
yeah,
So we have to keep the creative spirit alive, but then we have to keep a check. So it's not an easy
yes.
thing to do.
I,
That is the problem.
I think that's a very very important point, which maybe I would like for you to expand on. The importance of
Mm,
creating a safe space where
mm,
everybody feels comfortable being who you are, everybody feels comfortable expressing themselves,
mm,
but at the same time, they're not pushed there, where they're not pushed to a place where they feel their boundaries are being crossed, and they're accepting that in the moment just because of the wider culture at the institution. It's a
mm.
very tough balancing act, but if you can
Yes.
expand on how you as the institution
Yeah.
try to balance that.
I have an example. Actually, before I give you that example, many people, I would say about 30% of the people, when I asked them how did they choose NCA, they said,
Hmm.
I was a bit crazy. I was an abnormal child. I was the alike one. I was the one who didn't do well at school. But the moment I entered NCA, I thought, okay, it's okay
Everybody
to
here
be
is like
abnormal.
me.
Everybody's like me. So I need to talk about a professor, Baba Najam. He was an architect, a really a sweetheart. Uh, Maybe you're familiar with the word Roberts of NCA. This was this phenomena
Hmm.
where in mid 90s some boys they were called the Roberts. They called themselves Roberts. So this was like a subculture, a very anti-feminist subculture of men, just being men and being proud being boys, right? So this also was it's a big question when I'm talking to people. What
Hmm.
is Robertism? Who were Roberts? What were they trying to do? Nobody talks about Roberts. They're quite threatening to many people, especially girls. But then again, this was an experiment that could have been done only in NCA. So Baba Najam, now I know. I didn't know before. Baba Najam was friends with them. He was just keeping an eye on them. He was just checking their limits. So he was just correcting wherever they were going wrong. They did go wrong in many places, but the thing is that was an experiment. That was a creative experiment. So these kind of things can happen only in NCA because we don't judge people on being creative. We just check them when they're crossing the limits and being problematic for others. But before that, we just enjoy and let them be. That's a very very difficult thing to do.
I mean, a lot of
It's not
these
an easy.
subcultures will just be lost to history if everybody who was involved passes away. That the memories of those will be fade. So, what the work that you're doing is phenomenal. Is it only driven the work that you're doing, the archive that you're creating, the
Mm,
histories that you're writing about, or at least recording about NCA? Is it
mm.
just purely driven out of for what it is, or do you plan to turn it into series? Do you plan to turn it into book? Is there a wider aim like that?
It is going to be a publication, definitely, but I think this is going to be a lifelong thing because the sample that I've taken is only 5 people per year, which is nothing because we take people from all across Pakistan. So To get a fair sample, I have to have people from all provinces, from all income classes, from all genders. So I think I will consider my project slightly, I would say completer when I have like maybe 12, 1300 samples. um, but this project is less of an oral history. Oral history is one way of explaining it, but
Mm.
actually I'm generating raw data. I don't edit these. I don't edit anything out unless the person asked me to edit that word or that sentence out. So I'm trying to capture all the things that are not being said as well. So this is completely untouched raw data for future researchers, because obviously I'll be writing about some of the aspects that I've
Yes.
explored, but it's work of future cultural historians and critics. They will benefit from it, and it's a data that is relevant more to my own community, less for people outside NCA. It's not aimed at people outside
I
NCA
think
that
people who
much.
are listening might be interested in what you're doing, but might also be interested in replicating that, whether it be for the institutions, whether it be for the communities. Are there any lessons that you've learned which might help future researchers about how to record oral histories, what's important, what to do? Any words of advice to those people?
I took a journalism course myself because I'd never studied journalism, and I learned to be quiet. You know, I just have these questions and I just throw those questions at people, and then I am genuinely interested in their experiences. And we usually don't listen to people, but I trained myself to listen to people, and I actually do enjoy it. So if you find somebody enjoying what you're saying, people speak. That's it. That's it. You have to be a good listener, but and genuinely be interested in what they're saying. So that's it.
So the endeavor you've taken has not much, well, I mean, the institution is the same, but it doesn't have much to do with ceramics. So how did you become this person who's taking up endeavors like this or thinking about the world like this? Is the Fulbright experience or things that you learned in the US educating or forming the person that you've become?
Yeah, definitely. I would say it's a Fulbright is my second birth. No, I would say third birth. Second birth was coming to NCA, because that's a big, big experience. And then the third birth is Fulbright. And that one little thing that I can say only Fulbright gave me was this extreme freedom. Freedom from fear. Try whatever you want to do, and that is something that I was carrying from my NCA culture as well. So many people are not really happy with what I'm doing because a lot of things are getting exposed. Although I'm not publishing things, I'm not about to publish a lot of stuff. About 15 of the talks I can never even think about publishing. I will never publish it,
No.
but they're on record. They are on record, and I think that is something that where Fulbright actually kind of encouraged me. Uh, and I would say even surviving COVID did. Surviving COVID meant that this is your last chance. Um, so I think it is the wisdom that I'm trying to collect. Because if you graduated 20, 30, 40 years ago, you have certain words of wisdom. Like many people just said, like I would say it was about 10 or 12 people said that, NCA is doing what a mosque should do, what a masjid should do. So they have been giving me these intense words of wisdoms that can come only by synthesizing all that you've learned um, in your practice and in
Mm.
your life after NCA. So I think that should interest everybody. I mean, not just a ceramicist, not just a teacher. I'm an NCA. That's it.
You also
Mhm.
mentioned a very beautiful phrase. I believe it was Franklin Roosevelt who first articulated these four freedoms, and it was,
Mm,
I'm not sure if it was Ban Ki moon, but it was one of the UN General
mm,
Secretary's addresses as well. For people who
mm,
are hearing that for the first time, what do you
mm.
mean, and how did you experience that freedom from fear?
You know, I we must admit in Pakistan, in what we call Pakistani culture, Pakistani society, we have nothing but fear. Fear
Mm.
this and fear that. you never actually get a chance of doing something for your own self. You don't trust your own intellect, you don't trust your own decision making. And even now that I have, adult children and I'm 50, I still sometimes don't. That is the cultural training that we have got, and it's not easy to get rid of it. And I think Fulbright did that for me.
Mm.
That is so easy to say, but it's very, very difficult. You are young, you're in your 30s. People who were born in 70s and 60s, we probably would never experience that kind of freedom here. And I think that is what Fulbright did to me.
I, I keep my memory. I know you've said I'm young, but my memory seems to think otherwise. I believe it's Simon Sheck whose idea this is, that we either act out of fear or love. And the more we
Hmm.
learn how to act out of love as opposed to fear, the better
Hmm.
decisions we will make if we keep staying
Yeah.
afraid and
Yeah.
take those decisions.
Makes sense. Make
We
perfect sense. And
we won't.
I think this does describe my project.
Mm.
Everything that I'm doing is out of love of this place, of this process.
So this learning and cultural exposure from the US, um, we've already talked about how that's shaped you. Um, but how much of that were you able to bring back, and how much of that you make a part of your teaching philosophy?
My teaching philosophy is very simple because we belong to the discipline of design. Design is
Mm.
just trying to find solutions. So all the disciplines of designs in NCA, they just train people, and it takes a lot of time to train people. They train students to find problems all around them, and then simply try to find solution. But the process of finding solution and analyzing the problem, that is long, that takes time. But our entire philosophy of all the design disciplines is the same: solve something for people. And this is exactly what we do at ceramics as well, and even textiles. Advertising is different because that is like selling something to people who they may
Mm.
not want. But the real design disciplines is like just trying to find problems and sorting out solutions for that.
I think, since we're talking about NCA graduates, one other thing that differentiates NCA a lot of times is other art institutions, or at least some art institutions in Pakistan, really focus on the technical skills. So if you are a design student,
Hmm.
what you'd end up learning is how to completely use Photoshop, how to completely use
Hmm.
Illustrator.
Hmm.
But maybe the technical proficiency of an NCA student might not be equally as good, but
Hmm.
the design thinking element, which is not as tangible as sitting in a classroom and memorizing certain commands, might be stronger in an NCA student. So, as simple as it sounds, we teach them how to solve problems. What is the
Hmm.
pedagogy, or what is the teaching method which makes them think like designers?
Yeah, we leave them alone. you know there's a big change now. Coming back to the history of NCA,
Mm.
we used to have our canteen outdoor in the heart of just in front of my department. That was like the heart of the campus. But then when it moved to another remoter place, the hub just disappeared. When we had that hub right inside, right in front of all the departments, what was happening? There were professors taking classes on the canteen. There were people who just got that assignment. They couldn't even understand what the assignment was, and they were like not happy with the teacher or anything, and they were coming into the canteen. And there were people who were you know the people who we call lefunters, who do nothing but tease people and just sit around and have chai all the time. They were there as well.
So, me,
And then there
basically.
were, yeah, maybe, maybe. And then there were people who were about to give juries, and they were not ready. There's a word called andarap. Have you heard of this word?
No, I
This
have
is
not.
very NCS specific word. Oh, okay, I'll come back to it later.
But what does it mean
So
for people who
all
are
these people,
listening?
I'll, I'll come
Okay,
back to it later.
sure.
So all these things who are in different stages of solving problems, they were gathered on the canteen. And this exchange between teachers and senior students, and casual people and very serious people and people with books and people who don't have a clue. This exchange is the melting point. This is where the creativity happens, because you will learn from somebody who's the most stupidest person, but he'll give you a clue. So you are basically looking for clues. You are basically explaining your thing to people with different point of views and different entry points. And that mixture of responses is what fosters creativity. So whenever we give them an assignment, we don't make them sit in the class. I mean, they have to go out and just have tea and just cry or do whatever they want.
Beautiful.
So our contact time is very very little. So they're free to just do whatever they want. And this exactly is what I'm after. That what is the exact formula of this exchange, this creative exchange, and where's that point where people know that they've solved a thing? Maybe they never know. So coming back to Andarap Nexus was a society. I think it was an offshoot of Mime Society, but Andarap became a term as well. Andarap Marna means you have to present something, but you have no clue what to do, and you do that on the spot and give a good explanation. And many people have actually gotten really really good marks, after doing this Andarap presentation. So this is like a specific NCA term.
I think James Spader calls that pulling a rabbit out of the hat
Sorry.
in Boston Legal. Uh, what a beautiful conversation. It's always such a I always have such a great time talking to you, and this is one of my favorite podcasts that I've done with Quarantine with Fulbrighters, and it
Really.
just connects so beautifully, right? Even when people ask me about my Fulbright experience, I say 10 things before I even talk about my college. The first 10 things I will
Uh-huh.
say are probably going to be something about New York City, something that I experienced, something that I watched,
Yeah.
somebody that I met. It's that city. It's
Hmm.
that city that I learned from. It's these random interactions on the subway that I learned from more than sitting in a classroom in the college. So all those experiences, all those things that we bring back, and all that you do for helping other crazies like me out there and telling them it's okay to be crazy, it's okay to be different, and helping build this lighthouse, helping build this island. It's phenomenal, and I'm not sure how much of these oral histories will I be privy to as somebody from outside NCA, but I'm looking forward to the published work. And thank you so much, Shazia, for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I really love the lighthouse word. I'm going to, put that on in record somewhere.
It's true, right?
Thank,
Because
thank you.
an island is less inviting. A lighthouse is the one who's like, every ship around, here's home.
Hmm.
Here's home.
Yeah.
So if you're lost at
Yeah.
sea, here's land. Here's where you will be safe.
Yeah. That is a very very strange phenomenon, and I'm trying to analyze it. I'm trying to break it down to more understandable little parts. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. More power to you. And thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back again with another Fulbrighter on Quarantine with Fulbrighters. Take care.